Well, I think ostensibly it would appear move on from the coach, about to move on from the quarterback, fresh start for everything, and the quotes from the owner, as you've pointed out, Brian, lead you to believe that. But I would imagine that whoever takes this head coaching job is going to want to have the biggest say in who the quarterback of the team is. And I think there are a lot of coaches, particularly if you pull from the college ranks, that might say, all right, even if we are drafting a quarterback, Cam has a year left on his deal, is an incredibly reasonable cap number in today's dollars, $20 million for next season, and a lot of the things Cam Newton does well are those RPOs, some of the collegiate stuff that we're seeing, whether Arizona do with Kyler Murray, or he's not Lamar, but some of the stuff Lamar does. And so why don't we wait and see what this final year of his contract Cam Newton would look like in a new offense, with a new coaching staff, with a healthy foot and healthy shoulder for the first time in a few years. So I do think the window is at least slightly open for Cam to stay with the Carolina Panthers. Now, I don't know if Cam wants to. The way, I mean, if you're Cam Newton, you're the best player in the history of the franchise, and they have been essentially pushing you out the door because you got hurt. So, but I don't think the door is totally closed yet, and I'm certain the next, whoever comes in is not going to say, well, Kyle Allen is the guy I want to ride with for the next decade.
Well, David Tepper obviously wants to put his stamp on the organization. He said that. He's talked about the changes he made to the business staff, and now he's making changes to the football side. And part of that could be getting a new quarterback, getting his franchise quarterback. We're going to learn a lot more about this as the interview process starts, because he'll have an idea of what he wants to hear from those candidates. And if he is a big Cam supporter, he's going to want to hear a guy who says, let me go ahead and give Cam the best possible shot. And if he wants to move on to a different guy, that's going to be the type of head coach that he hires. I don't think it's done for Cam in Carolina in terms of it being a certainty, but I would imagine they're trying to rebrand this whole organization with this move, and part of that rebranding is probably moving on from him longer term.
Yeah, Cam has been the face of that organization for a long time, but the biggest question about Cam is how healthy is he, and can he remain healthy? That's the biggest question. The only thing that has stopped Cam throughout his career is his health. And so the next coach is going to come in and say, all right, this is what I want to do. I want to be able to run those RPOs. I want to be able to sprint the quarterback out and get him outside of the pocket and throw the football. And can Cam do that for 16 games? Because if he can, then you have the opportunity to draft a young quarterback and say, okay, you just groom yourself under Cam. We got him under contract for a reasonable price. And at that point, you groom your young quarterback. You groom him with Christian McCaffrey as well. And then you find a way to get rid of Cam at the end of the season. But if Cam plays well, you keep him. So if you're a new coach, there's nothing better than having a veteran quarterback in your locker room that has been there and done that if he's healthy. That's the biggest question.
The only thing that I'd say, if you're going to try to go to the Baltimore RPO, heavy quarterback run system like that, when you're Cam Newton, you're not interested in doing that. That's not. You're making $19 million next year with a chance to make significantly more. You're not interested in carrying the ball 20 times a game, and especially after you had a history of injuries. That's the last thing you want to do, is to be put in that position. If you're going to run that system, you need to go get a young guy that's willing to do that and put himself in that situation.
We're all assuming that he's going to recover fully from this Liz Frank injury, and that his shoulder is going to be 100% fine, and that whatever tinkering they did with his throwing motion is suddenly all going to fall into place. Those are a lot of ifs to see if you're going to get the same Cam Newton, or even close to the same Cam Newton, who's willing or able to run all the RPOs. But my question is, how does the timing work out with all that? Are you going to have time to know whether he's healthy by the time you get a new head coach in, by the time the draft rolls around? I mean, there's a lot of things that have to fall into place.
Yeah, but you said we're all assuming something. I'm not assuming any of that. Well, I am reading the NFL and the world that exists where Nick Foles gets $88 million on speculation. There are the known quantity quarterbacks in this league are never available. The last one that was Kirk Cousins, and he's a slight known quantity, and he got a fully guaranteed contract. Why? Because you never have a guy that you know is healthy and at the very least above average that comes available at this position. So, yeah, there are some assumptions that are baked into these things, and I think Coach is right. I think the best point was, yes, the next head coach is going to get to pick the quarterback, but the next head coach might be picked based on his thoughts on the quarterback, because it's going to be communicated in the interview process, and that's a really good point that I hadn't really thought about it crystallized that way. I also think the next head coach, if I had to bet, is not going to be as good or as successful as Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera's there for 9 years. I would argue they underachieved twice. The year after the Super Bowl, where they had a clear hangover, Cam was not as good. They won 6 games. The one other year they underachieved was in between 12 and 15-win seasons when they went 7-8-1. And even that year, though, they won the division and won a playoff game. You find me the year where, like, wow, Panthers weren't good enough. They were a 1-win team that then won 6. They then improved to 7. Then 12 wins and a bye. Then the 7-win season I mentioned. 15-1. The 6-win season I mentioned. 11-5. Last year, they're 6-2. And Cam gets hurt. This year, Cam gets hurt. And they still have won 5 games.
They're the only team that hasn't had consecutive winning seasons since 1995.
And how many winning seasons are there total in that list?
There's 3. But how many of those years?
Out of how many years?
Out of 9.
9.
How many years?
And didn't they have the NFL MVP?
Yeah, and they went 15-1.
So they
the year
overachieved?
had the NFL MVP.
2-time Coach of the Year.
Hold on, but what year? I mean,
look, I like
what,
Ron Rivera too, but when you treat Jason Garrett pretty harshly for the mediocre season they're having, but yet a 7-8-1 where you go to the playoffs, you're like, oh, yeah,
but Jason Garrett, but Jason Garrett does not get criticized for the 4-12 year when what happened? When his quarterback got hurt. You look at what Ron Rivera did. The first 2 years they're building from a 1-15 team. They then win 12 games, win the division, 15 games, a terrible 6-win season, 11 games and play a great playoff game against the Saints. And last year they're 6-2. He had a stretch of 5 seasons of tremendous success, the closest you can come to without winning a Super Bowl. And then Cam got hurt. And so, like, that is the line of demarcation. Now, if you want to argue they should have had a better backup plan in store this season, fine. So be it. But I thought they were overachieving this year until this last month of football. And I think Ron Rivera was ahead of the curve on analytics. I think he is, when I watch league-wide, he doesn't make game management gaffes like so many of these guys do. And the Cowboys have, to me, underachieved given talent. The Panthers have overachieved given talent, to my eye.
That's your biggest point. The Cowboys have underachieved given the talent that they have on that football team at this point. And Jason Garrett hasn't got the most out of the talent. I would argue that Ron Rivera got the most that he possibly could out of the talent that he had there in Carolina. That football team was a good team. They had the injuries. You talked about the injury to the linebacker core as well as the injury to the quarterback. Both of the quarterback, the head of their respective side of the ball. Those are big issues for those guys in Carolina. Ron Rivera was a good coach. He wasn't able to win those big games. But he didn't also have any special players on his offense besides Cam Newton and, at this point, Christian McCaffrey.
Well, you do have the NFL MVP. That's a pretty special player in the hierarchy of special players. And I'm not trying to kill Ron Rivera. I like Ron Rivera. It's just when we use a criteria of 3 winning seasons out of 9 years as a benchmark of overachieving, and then you beat up someone like Jason Garrett and saying he's underachieving, even though he's won division titles and his success rate is arguably just as good.
Okay, but it depends on what you want to say. 3 winning seasons out of 9 years. It's true. We also could say has been to the divisional round at least or further 3 times out of 9 years. Has been to a Super Bowl when one guy has not been to a conference championship game. And Jenna, the stat you gave, which is the Panthers are the only team in football to not have a consecutive winning season since 1995, that to me speaks to my point. Because the first 15 years of that, he's not there. It is not a franchise with a history of success. The longest history of consistency, of consistent relevancy and success has been under Ron Rivera. And you said they had the league MVP. And they've been damn good when the league MVP has been healthy. What happened was the league MVP got hurt. You can't justify the 2016 6-10 season. I get it. Super Bowl hangover or not, that shouldn't have happened. But every other year, this team has overachieved its talent level to my eye. And the 1 year their MVP played like an MVP. They're a possession away from winning the Super Bowl, and he doesn't get to finish the season. I just think it's a bad move by them.
All right. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.